Good morning, everyone. We've got quite a few participants registered, so I'm just going to let everyone get let in, and once it settles down, then we'll kick off. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is Scott Macmillan. I'm the Managing Director and CEO of Invictus Energy. Today we've got a webinar to announce an additional discovery from the Lower Angwa in the Mukuyu-2 well. Obviously a fantastic achievement building off the back of our discovery in the Upper Angwa, and this has opened up a significant resource for us in Mukuyu, but also in the wider Kabora Basin and our dominant acreage position that we have. So just a recap of the announcement that went out earlier this morning. We have made an additional gas discovery in the Lower Angwa. We have retrieved hydrocarbon samples from the Lower Angwa, as well as some additional samples from the Upper Angwa. Obviously, this is a very, very significant achievement for the company, unlocking two discoveries in two horizons. We've achieved what we set out to do in proving a discovery from Mukuyu-2, which also has allowed us to declare a discovery in Mukuyu-1. So of particular note, this is a 7-kilometer step out from Mukuyu-1, 450 meters up dip. So a very, very substantial step out distance for an appraisal well, and an exploration well for the Lower Angwa horizon, which we hadn't tested before. So to have both of them come in is an absolutely fantastic result. Preliminary net pay numbers of 34.9 meters across the Upper and the Lower Angwa, and that is from both of those horizons. We have concluded the sidetrack, and that was above the overpressured gas that we encountered in the Mukuyu-1. Sorry, I beg your pardon, the Mukuyu-2 main wellbore, where we had encountered overpressured gas, which caused us to have to implement well control issues and control the well to prevent gas from seeping into the wellbore, which obviously from a safety perspective is critical. We have now continuing our wireline program to go and get some other data, which includes rotary sidewall cores, as well as VSP data and some other wireline logs that will help us in our future evaluation and refine those net pay numbers. So we have now proven hydrocarbons in the Upper Angwa and the Lower Angwa, also hydrocarbons in the pebbly arcos in this location from that residual gas that we recovered and what we can see on the logs, and again residual hydrocarbons in the Dandy formation as well. So we'll talk about what those implications are for the rest of the Mukuyu structure, but also in the wider basin where we've got some shallower targets. So the rig 202 at the moment is continuing the wireline, and then we will go on to run the 7-inch liner, which will allow us to suspend this well for a future well test. So these are the sample carriers that you can see here from the wireline formation testing tool. So these look like little pressurized bottles that you would get in a similar soda stream concept, if you like. These were only retrieved late yesterday afternoon. I know I said to everyone we'd have a trophy and a bit of condensate in a bottle, but we hadn't had time to blow those down before market open today. Guys have been tied up with running the other wireline logs, and also it requires specific equipment that needs to be set up in preparation for this. So unfortunately, we didn't have time, but we'll get those once they go to the lab, and we'll have them shipped back here to keep as a fantastic memento from a very, very significant development for the company, for our shareholders, for Zimbabwe, and for the Kabora Basin, where we control all of the running room. So from where we stand now, again, just reiterate that this is still very early days in the basin, and these results, what we typically see from good fields and big fields is they get better with the more wells that you drill, and that's certainly what we've seen in the Albertine Graben, in the Lower, in the Perth Basin. This is just the beginning of what is going to be a very, very substantial basin, and fortunately, we've secured all of the conventional acreage within the basin, which puts us in an extremely strong position and is going to generate a huge amount of value for us. If you look at Perth Basin transactions that have been going on from over the last 5 years, the core of the Perth Basin, smaller than what we're dealing with in the Cabora Bassa Basin. You've had less than 3 trillion cubic feet of gas discovered there in the King Ear and Highcliffe play, and a combined value from a multitude of players that have begun to be consolidated now, is over $4 billion from that core basin area where the King Ear discoveries have happened. Now, to put that in context, that's across a number of different companies, different working interests in the basin, different size discoveries, and also limited means of monetizing it. So there's been very little of that Perth Basin gas that's been discovered actually monetized yet, because it's hard work to do it. Where we're sitting, we've got an abundance of monetization discoveries. Doesn't matter how much gas we discover, we've got a market for all of it, both domestically and in the region. And we've got people biting our hands off at the moment to sign term sheets for gas to power, for fertilizer, for a number of other things. So this is going to be able to be fast tracked from a development point of view, because we've got 80% equity and we've got infrastructure to monetize this immediately. So it's a very, very key differential. And if you look at where the value of Invictus is today, and I must have read a different announcement than everyone else, and what we've seen this morning, but we're trading at 5% of what the Perth Basin value is, which is a pretty ludicrous scenario. So that $4 billion valuation comes from the M&A transactions that we've seen with AWE, with Norwest, with Warrego, and we've also got the value of some of the pure play players in there, which amounts up to over $4 billion, excluding the Beach and Lattice transaction, which was a little bit more opaque. So where we sit currently, obviously hugely undervalued, but going into where we are, as we mentioned, it took a long time for people to wake up to the AWE White Sea discovery, something that I was highly frustrated working on because I could see the value there. And I think this is going to repeat itself in the Cabora Bassa Basin here for us. In terms of where we've located these wells, again, they've been located using 2D data in structural locations to test where we think reasonable trapping configurations are for the players we've been chasing. And primarily that's been the Upper Angwa, and then also testing the Lower Angwa. So unlocking this with 3D, as has been done in the Perth Basin, as was done in the Lower, as was done in Uganda, after the initial discoveries, these things get bigger because you're able to map them more clearly and go and then chase the sweeter spots of the fields where you've got better reservoir quality, because all of the other reservoir elements have been proven. The net pay estimates that we've provided to date have been based on conventional cutoffs. There is a substantial amount of gross reservoir volume that's not included in these net pay numbers. And as we stated before, we need to get a handle on where these net pay cutoffs sit. We've got to go away and do our studies, integrate the data that we've gathered from Mukuyu-2, and then figure out what's more appropriate. And typically, you're going to see this grow over time as you gather more data, and that's what happens with good fields. They get better. We've got overpressure gas beneath us in below 3,400 meters, which again we needed to control with heavy mud weight to prevent the gas from flowing up to surface. So I think from that perspective, we've still got a significant amount of upside beneath us. We TD'd the well in the sidetrack. We were still within gas, so we haven't seen any or interpreted any gas water contacts as of yet, or observed any water bearing reservoirs in the upper and the lower Angwa as of yet. So again, huge upsides to the head, and very, very early days from this result and from this basin. So at the moment we are concluding that Y-line run, and then once all that data has come back, we've got some studies work to do to integrate with the fluids, with the cores, and that will help us refine the future net pay numbers. We'll then run the liner, the 7-inch liner, which will enable us to retain the ability to well test in the lower Angwa, and that'll be drilling out in 6-inch hole. That will allow us to reset the mud weight and have a significant amount of the Pebliarcos, all of the Pebliarcos, and a significant amount of the up Angwa, depending on where we choose to set the liner behind pipe, which allows us then to drill ahead with a higher mud weight to properly evaluate that overpressured gas zone in the lower Angwa, potentially also go deeper towards the sort of 4,000 meter mark as well to see what's beneath that. Like a similar result we had in the upper Angwa, still TD and gas, still had shows. From the analysis of the real-time fluid sampling, we do have some condensate that we've seen across the fluid analyzer. We had a bit of mud across the analyzer, so it wasn't clear on the effect on that. So once we get the fluid samples compositional analysis back from the labs, we'll have a much better idea of the condensate yield. As I stated in the previous webinar, the Mukuyu-2 well location is more into the north of the structure, and we'll show you a structure map in a second. And down into the northern side of the basin through here, we've got the depot center of the basin, which is up to 12 to 16 kilometers of sedimentary thickness. And the source rock through there, and you can see it dips down towards here and it keeps going, is in more of the dry gas window. We can see some influence of both liquids and dry gas in the well from the mud gas. And as you stated, the hydrocarbon charge story is quite complicated because we've got so many source rock intervals and it's happening. There's multiple charge events, so we do get some mixing between dry gas, liquids rich gas, and then also oil. So it is a complicated story to figure out, but fortunately we've got a very good mud gas data set that we've acquired from this well, and we'll be able to start putting the pieces of the puzzle together from a charge perspective. That's important as well for the rest of the basin and the rest of the prospects in the basin outside of Mukuyu. Inside of Mukuyu, though, we did get some residual gas in the Dandy formation. Now, this was drilled in the subthrown horse block, and we can see here, so this is the top of that Dandy formation there. We don't have a suitable lateral seal across here. So we've had hydrocarbons migrate into here, but they've leaked out and over time. So where the Dandy is located in a more optimal trapping position, where we do have lateral seal, that opens that play up as well in Mukuyu. And then also in some of these other basin margin plays that we're looking at and prospects where the Dandy is most of where the targets are located, obviously is a very, very positive development, because we've got seal and we've got some trapping mechanisms in those. Not on this line. This is not one of the lines that has one of these. This is just a cross section between Mukuyu-1 and 2. Similar thing in the Pebliarcos, where we have residual hydrocarbons in the Pebliarcos, and we did recover some residual gas that was from when we recovered some water samples from the Pebliarcos, and that came out of solution when we blew down the sample chamber, the water sample chamber, and saw some residual gas from that unit. So the implications for that is we've again proven hydrocarbon charge through the Pebliarcos, and that we have got an active system through here. Again, we've got some lateral seal issues with the Pebliarcos, and elsewhere in the structure, we're going to see that come into the fore, where it is able to retain hydrocarbons that have been charged into the structure. So running room still in the Dandy and the Pebbly Arcos, in addition to the discoveries that we've now made in the Upper Angwa and the Lower Angwa. So a very, very exciting development where we still got upside potential from more net pay in the Upper and the Lower Angwa, and also additional play intervals in the Pebbly Arcos and in the Dandy formation. So looking at the locations of where Mukuyu-2 was drilled compared to Mukuyu-1. So in Mukuyu-1, this was drilled on 2D data that was uncalibrated with no well penetration in the basin. So that was the initial mapping of the structure that we had. What we thought was relatively crystal, it wasn't all the way up dip, ended up being actually quite a long way down dip. And this would probably have been if you had perfect information, you probably would have drilled something more crystal through here first, and you would have stepped down the structure to go and test where your potential gas water contacts are and extent of your columns in from Mukuyu-1. So the fact that we did that first, has proven up a big volume in the Upper Angwa, where we have gas down to where we TD in Mukuyu-1, and then proven it 7 kilometers away and 450 meters up dip in Mukuyu-2. So a substantial amount of gas between these two locations. Looking at the fault orientation, we've stepped across this way, and the faults run roughly northwest southeast. So the fact that we've stepped across and proven it over here, the likelihood of it being in the remainder of the structure to the northwest obviously is very, very high. So we've now got to go away and have a look at the data. Obviously, we will have a better calibration of the 2D seismic data. We plan to shoot some 3D data, which will really unlock the Mukuyu field. As I mentioned, it's a fluvial environment. We'll be able to track the reservoir units much better than we can on 2D data, which is very difficult. So this no doubt the structure will change after the 3D. We saw that in Lokacha with Ngamia, which was drilled on 2D data initially, roughly a kind of 5 square kilometer feature that they were targeting, ended up being 25 square kilometers. Pre-drill volumetrics, 50 million barrels, ultimate discovery size, and proven once they appraised it and shot 3D was 300 million barrels. So the 2D early stage phase of how we're exploring, we're chasing big structural targets. And once we've proven them, we can go and then unlock them with 3D data. And that's the method that we're looking at applying. You can shoot 3D in the beginning, but it's a labor intensive and expensive exercise. And if you can't map these things on 2D, in our opinion, you shouldn't be chasing them because they're not going to be big enough. We're out here elephant hunting, trying to uncover these big material targets that are going to be needle moving. And we've done that now with Mukuyu. And so now we can go and refine this with 3D seismic. Looking at the Lower Angwa, this is the top structure map for that. We've got some closures around here. Again, the imaging where we're getting down to this sort of depth in the Lower Angwa has started to get quite tough on the 2D seismic. So part of the 3D program is to design the acquisition program to high grade the data acquisition for these two levels, which will allow us to map these a lot better than what we're seeing at the moment. So Mukuyu-2, where the Lower Angwa is, again, we've got, we're still not at the crest of the structure in Mukuyu-2, and we've got a lot of running room in this. And, we drilled roughly 600 meters into the Lower Angwa and still TD'd in gas. So again, very, very good potential going down dip to where we see here. We've got a lot of relief on the structure. So, over 1,000 meters. So it's a fantastic start and an incredible result so far. So back to the Lokichar Basin and the Cabora Bassa Basin comparison, and what we saw unfold here in the Albertine Graben in Uganda, the Perth Basin, Guyana. We're seeing it unfold in Namibia at the moment. Once you have proven the play and opened the basin, the running room is substantial, and then you are down to individual prospects in terms of their success. But once you understand the recipe and how the ingredients fit together from a petroleum system, it is, as I've said before, as close as you get to shooting fish in a barrel from an exploration point of view. So in the Lokichar Basin, Loprot 1 was the opening well, the basin opener. The first well was actually Ilie Springs, which was drilled by Shell in 1992, which was a dry hole. They drilled Loprot 1 after that and found a relatively small column of oil, which Shell deemed to be subcommercial at the time, and then the basin was relinquished. You had then ultimately Africa Oil and Tullow move in, recognized the play and the ability, to repeat the success that had been developed in Uganda, again from some dry holes that were drilled, some high CO2 wells that were drilled initially by Heritage in the block to the south, before the play opening discoveries in Mputa and Warrega were found. So they went to the Lokichar and drilled Ngamia 1, which was the String of Pearls play that they opened up, and subsequently had a number of discoveries. Same with Iwoyi in the Riftflank play, different play type. 2 discoveries from that, and an 88% success rate overall. Uganda and the Albertine Graben, 85% success rate. The Perth Basin, you're probably at somewhere around the 90-ish mark. There's been, I think, two dry holes in the King Ear play drilled in the last 5 years. So phenomenal success rates once you prove the basin up. And again, we're looking at this in Mukuyu. So, subsequently now from Mukuyu, we're 2 from 2 in terms of discoveries. Mukuyu 1 is a discovery as well in the Upper Angwa, because we have got the logs over the same units in the Upper Angwa, and we can we can declare a discovery based on what we've seen from Mukuyu-2 and the recovery of hydrocarbons to surface with the wireline formation testing tool. So again, we've done it with a conventional sampling tool, as opposed to a lot of discoveries being declared nowadays from just logs. We went out and we set ourselves the objective of proving movable hydrocarbons, and we've done that. So that is a very different scenario to what we're seeing from other explorers. So now that we've got Mukuyu 1 and Mukuyu 2, obviously it opens up the running room for the rest of the Central Fairway play. We're maturing some additional prospects from there with some 2D that we shot earlier this year with the CV23 survey. I'll run through that in a second. And then we've got the basin margin play, aka the String of Pearls play, which has been prolific in Kenya and Uganda. So opening up one of those again will lead to a very high success rate because of the play similarities that we see with those prospects. So this is how we see this basin unfolding. Similar high success rates and proving up multi-TCF, multi-billion barrel finds within the basin now that it's been proven. So looking at the running room and the implication for us, again, we've got Mukuyu up here, which is the big feature in the block in Special Ground 4571. We have got some bigger structures as well in the eastern portion of our license area in EPO 1848 and some into 1849. We've matured that with this red infill survey here that we've got, and that will enable us to mature these to drill ready status and extend the play on the Central Fairway play to the east. And then we've got the basin margin play down here. So 1.2 billion barrels of potential amongst this play puts it on par with the Lokichar. Again, as I said, the Lokichar grew over time once 3D was applied to it, and you're mapping these things on very coarse 2D data, and you've got to be quite conservative when you do so. So we do have a tremendous amount of upside ahead of us that will be developed in this basin, because we know it works at Mukuyu, and there is a very, very high likelihood of it being repeatable across the basin in these prospects that we've mapped, where we've proven the hydrocarbon charge, all the play elements, and now it's just down to an individual prospect level. So we will integrate the CB23 data. We've just started receiving the time data. We'll get the depth data towards the end of this month, and that will allow us to continue and finish the mapping in the eastern area. We'll integrate that with our existing surveys, and then go and risk and rank all of these prospects, and then pick our next exploration target out of that, which will allow us to either extend this play to the east, or open up this brand new play with the basin margin play. Either of those is obviously a huge value add for us. So I think from what people were concerned about pre Mukuyu-2 and post Mukuyu-1 was we were stepping out 7 kilometers, and where are we going to find hydrocarbons? Well, yes, we have, and we've proven not 1 but 2 discoveries in the Upper Angwa and the Lower Angwa. So from a objective point of view of what we told people we were going to set out to do, we have delivered that, certainly, and had some upside in the Lower Angwa as well, still ahead of us. So it has been a very trying campaign at times. There have been a lot of lessons learned from this, and we're going to apply that in the basin in the future with our future wells. We've got some refinements to do to some sections of the well design. Some sections we're going to have to completely redesign based on what we've seen from Mukuyu-2. We've had a huge amount of effort from everyone in our team. We're a small team. We do a lot of heavy lifting, all of us together, and it's been an incredible journey to be on with everyone and watching this unfold. For some of us, it's been a lot longer than others, but we've had a very dedicated team, and I'm extremely grateful to everyone in our team, from the drilling team, the subsurface team, logistics, as well as procurement, the well sites team, and a number of others. Some of our contractors as well have been absolutely fantastic and gone the extra mile, which is greatly appreciated. So it has been fantastic. Thank you all to everyone, to our shareholders for their support. We sincerely appreciate it, and we're looking forward to a very, very bright future in the basin in Mukuyu. We're working on a number of commercialization opportunities at the moment, so that we can fast track this, and then from there we've got a huge playground now to go and prove up and deliver multi TCF and hopefully a lot of liquids associated with that as well, and that will certainly be company changing, country changing, and energy dynamic changing in the region. So thanks very much for all your time and all your support, and thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to bringing you some updates from the results from Mukuyu-2 in the very near future, as well as some info on the future program once we settle with that, and how that's going to look. The rig tour 2 is going to remain stacked at the Mukuyu-2 location, which will allow us to come back as soon as possible once we've got long leads and everything else ordered for the test, and that puts us in a good position. We've got the rig now for a further 2 years on a very, very good deal with Exxaro. They've been a pleasure to work with, and we've now got a very, very busy future ahead of us. It's the end of the beginning, as I'd like to say. It's been hard work to get to this point and prove up this basin, but now we can go forward with confidence that we've got a very, very huge prize that we are in control of now, At times, it's felt like a bit of a Nantucket sleigh ride, and that is, for those of you unfamiliar with that terminology, a Nantucket sleigh ride is from the early days of whaling, where they were harpooned without much kit to winches or anything else to control it, and you just had to hold on whilst this was dragging you in your small little boat around. And at times, this project has felt like that, but we've taken down an elephant now in Mukuyu, and that is a significant development for the company. We've proven this field now in Mukuyu, and we've now got a lot more ahead of us in terms of the ultimate size of the prize. And I think people should concentrate on that. This has just been the beginning of opening up this basin, and there's a lot more upside ahead. So with that, I'll open up for one or two questions. Derek?
Hey, Scott, just a quick couple. I think investors are pretty keen on hearing something about liquids. I'm just checking when those Upper Angwa and eventually Lower Angwa fluid sample results come back. Are you guys going to report them out to the market pretty much straight away? And also, if the CGR is good enough, retrospectively call this a wet gas / gas condensate discovery?
Yes, well, that's what we believe it is, a gas condensate discovery. Now we just need to confirm the CGRs, as we said in the announcement. So I think people getting twisted off because we haven't announced liquids yet is very premature.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's got to be done properly. We've always said, again, that the charge story is complicated. There is obviously wet gas around. We saw that even from the residual gas in the Pebbly Arcos, where we saw some C5s and C6s. Now that's going to be that's just come out of gas in solution. The liquids of that component would have dropped out further, and bear in mind that the mobile phase of that was water, not gas. So we haven't had a chance to run the gas through a compositional analysis yet, the ones that we've recovered. So as soon as we do, we'll obviously announce that to the market. So
have you got rough timing, like weeks, months, for those lab results to come back from that Houston lab?
So they've got to go on a boat, and they've got to go to Houston, and they've got to go in the lab, and then they've got to get analyzed. So we don't have an exact time frame at the moment, but once they get to the lab, it's a relatively quick process. So once the paperwork's finished for export of these samples and they're on their way, we'll have a much better idea on that timing. But I would say, it will probably be in early Q1 next year.
Beautiful. And just net pay from the main bore, the deeper overpressured Lower Angwa sands. I missed the start of the webinar, but were they included in these net pay figures, or because obviously you
some
guys
of it is,
have
we didn't have
combo
yeah, we didn't have coverage over all of it, so we had some sticky hole conditions, so not all of it is included. And again, and that's why
to reiterate to all the investors listening, you guys were getting good gas chromatograph readings right the way down, even though you didn't get them covered with quad combo.
Well, the gas shows, and the gas chromatograph comes up from the mud gas when you're drilling it. So that comes from from below the bit. So yes, we still TD'd in gas when we were there, and from all the way down for where we got the logs to, we were still we didn't see any signs of water bearing reservoir.
Yeah, copy that. I think there's just a lot of information you guys have here that people who aren't familiar with the oil and gas game start to twist off when they see gas discovery and not gas condensate discovery. And you guys sort of alleviating that pressure, that concern, by just saying, hey, look, the rest of the data here actually supports, condensate, etc. Might just goes a ways to helping those people calm themselves.
Yeah, I battle to understand the fascination with the CGR ratios, to be honest. Yes, it is nice to have, and it's good in terms of your economics, and it's cream on the top. But we've always stated that this is primarily a gas play. Wet gas, yes, but primarily gas. And as we've said, we've got a complicated charge story we've still got to figure out. And from a monetization perspective, gas is the easiest thing to monetize where we are, as opposed to liquids. So the liquids comes as a bonus. and people, getting twisted off because we haven't announced a CGR at the moment is very premature. I mean, it doesn't affect the Perth Basin where the CGR is 0.2 barrels per million scuff, which is a nuisance, as opposed to a net benefit because you got to process it, and it's such a tiny amount it actually costs you money to send away. So it is frustrating that there's a lack of that understanding, but we just got to articulate that a little bit better, I guess.
Absolutely. And just the overpressure mechanism for the Lower Angwa sands, I mean, that's a pretty sandy interval. Usually you expect overpressure where you've got a lot of shales helping to stop that pressure from bleeding off.
We do have a big shale from that 3,400 meters to when we start to get into the overpressure gas then. So it is, again, still early days. We've still got to go and gather all the data, digest it, and figure out what's going on. So fantastic. It's still, we've still got a big jigsaw puzzle to fit all the pieces together. And it's, again, I think a lot of people are used to getting information straight away because basins that other companies are exploring in or drilling in have got a lot of legacy data that they're able to lean on, and you can look at another result, another field, another well, and immediately have some frame of reference with a lot of data and studies that's gone in behind that. So you can look at it and digest it and interpret that result a lot quicker. With this is the second well that's been drilled in the basin. So it is very early days, and we've got a lot of the pieces of the puzzle still to figure out how they fit together.
Yep,
but I think the important thing is we've seen how what these when you have success in the early stage of the basin, how that unfolds. So I think that's what people need to focus on is we've proven hydrocarbons in Mukuyu, and we've got a huge structure, 200 square kilometers. And we've also got a number of, we've got a dozen drill-ready prospects now waiting to go, which is, bigger than what's being aggregated in places like the Perth Basin that people are very familiar with. So,
yeah, on Mukuyu alone, it sounds like you guys have a lot of positive data up your sleeve that you can't necessarily spell out in black and white. It's this, but the future is looking pretty bright for Mukuyu alone. But you just have to go in here conservative, right, to begin.
Well, absolutely, because I think you see some people go in and put very aggressive numbers out, and then they come and get them independently audited, and they go backwards, which is clumsy at best. So we don't want to end up in that situation.
Yep, and just last one, rough meters on the remaining overpressured sand that wasn't covered by combo that you couldn't consider for net pay assignment?
Well, we don't know where it ends, so we ended up TDing.
I just mean a down to figure.
I think we only had it from memory, and there's been a lot of runs, so 3,500-ish, I think. So still a fair bit.
Yeah, there's a decent amount of meters there. Yep. All right. Thanks, Scott. Cheers for that.
Shane.
G'day, Scott. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Just a quick one on reservoir quality. You haven't made any mention on what kind of reservoir quality we've seen in the Lower Angwa. Can you comment on that at all?
Yeah, sure. Better than the Upper Angwa. So we've got a higher average porosity in the Upper Angwa. Sorry, in the Lower Angwa than we have in the Upper Angwa. And as I mentioned on the previous, and that's if you just take the net pay averages through that. So what we've seen though is that reservoir quality is more depositional environment related, and so you still do get good reservoir quality in the Upper Angwa and the Lower Angwa. It's just where we are in the system, because it's a fluvial system, and you are going to get some dirtier sections. in the in a fluvial system, compared to if you're bang smack in the middle of a stack channel. So that's why with 3D data we can go and map these channels and amalgamated channels and target those, which will increase the net to gross that we see from and the net pay from from all of these reservoirs. So that is again, we've gone out now and proven the play. Now we can go and chase it in the sweeter spots by utilizing 3D.
Have you seen anything that might sort of be a cause for concern in terms of how this is likely to flow during the flow test next year?
Well, we've recovered samples to surface, so that'll tell you something about how we're able to do it versus how other companies go about and start stimulating to try and get gas up to surface. So we've got to go away now, design the test, analyze all the data, and go on from there. So
excellent. And just one final one. If the plan was to blow down a sample on site, and that wasn't completed just because you've run out of time before the market opened this morning, is there a reason why you wouldn't keep just one sample, for example, on site, blow that down over the next few days so that we can get a verification of those liquids, get that sort of trophy photo to help sort of support the share price?
No, I don't think so, Shane. Showing a little bottle of condensate, I think, is if people think that that's the be all and end all, rather than the pictures of the chambers and everything else, then I honestly don't know what to do to help people understand it. Blowing that down then will also waste a sample for analysis. It would have been nice. We had it planned, we had it in the contract to do it, but we'll get that anyway from the lab, and we'll be able to also analyze that sample from a compositional perspective rather than just burning one, and we'll get some trophies from it later. So I think that's not in the plan at the moment.
And you're definitely sort of confident that it's condensate and not volatile oil or light oil in the mix there?
Well, again, it needs, as I've stated before, we've got a very complicated charge and hydrocarbon charge and source rock story here. So whether it's volatile oil, whether it's gas condensate, I think it's likely to be gas condensate in the Mukuyu-2 location because of where we are, and we're in the northern. We've got access to this northern kitchen, which is drier gas than what we see, and see that migrating up into the structure through here. So it's going to be a mixture of some drier gas, some wetter gas, and some volatile oil somewhere, and an oil rim, more likely. So I think the sudden fixation on liquids and condensate is completely bizarre. I can't put a handle on it. So we think these are more liquid prone in the basin margin. We've got the gas samples. We've recovered them to surface. They need to go to the lab for analysis.
Yep. Sounds good. Hey, sorry, just one other one that you haven't touched on today. When are you likely to announce the funding strategy moving forward?
Well, I can't give you guidance on that, Shane, because we need to settle it, and we're working in the background on that. But obviously can't disclose that at the moment.
Okay. All right, that's great. That's all for me. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. We've got one more here. Time for one more, and then Peter.
Good morning, Scott. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes, I can.
Oh, good. So I just wondered, when are we going to see some logs and of the logs you've run, and also the pressure profile from the RFT or the MDT. Any sign of H2S? Yeah, those are my questions.
Sure. So no sign of any other gases but hydrocarbons. So no CO2, no H2S, no nitrogen so far. But again, we've now got reservoir fluid samples, so those have got to go away to be analyzed. But we certainly didn't see any over the compositional fluid analyzer when we were sampling. On the logs and pressures, those are what the company goes out to acquire from an intellectual property perspective. So we're not going to be releasing those. When, typically companies only do that when they're putting themselves up for sale. So we don't want to, we've got a lot of shareholders that are very, a lot of industry people that want to go away and do their own analysis, but that is, I don't know how many other companies you see publishing their logs and pressure data. It's very, very few, and the demands for us to do it, I think, are pretty misguided. We've got very good people. Our technical team is excellent. We've got all of our stuff gets independently done as well. So this is what the intellectual property and our what we go out to do is to prove up the space and work it up and generate some value from it, and having every man and his dog crawling over the logs, where we've got a lot of amateur geophysicists, petrophysicists everywhere else. I mean, it's not a scenario we're going to get into.
Okay, well, what about the pressure profile?
Well, again, Peter, it's exactly the same story. We've still got some work to do. We've still got to interpret all the data and analyze all of it.
I just wondered, you've got a lot of samples, and I can only imagine the reason you have so many samples might be that you're seeing a discontinuous pressure profile, and that there might be some sort of dreadful word, but compartmentalization going on. Do you think that's possible?
Well, we've got multiple samples from the same interval, so I wouldn't read anything into the number of samples that we've acquired. And some of them, given the state of the wireline tool when we sent it down, we took some insurance samples early on in the cleanups at every single station, just in case we had a tool failure. So some of those aren't cleaned properly, with all the filtrate removed. So that's the first reason. For the, on the other part in compartmentalization, if we look at a structure map on the field, I'm going to guess we are compartmentalized based on these faults through here. So again, the other aspect to it is we've got a complicated charge story and history here, and understanding the compositional profile through the well is also very important, so that we can help match the mud gas data that we get and the isotope data from whilst we're drilling to what we are ultimately seeing retained in the reservoirs. So that's all part of the detective work that we've got to do. So that's why there are a lot of samples that have been acquired from this phase of the, by this phase, I mean, at this early stage. Typically you're only going to go and, get a handful, 2 or 3 when you're appraising, to look and see what the fluid composition is compared to your other reservoir. But we have multiple reservoirs as well. We're not just targeting one single horizon here. So we do need to understand how that looks, both vertically and laterally across the basin.
Okay, thanks. And are you able to share what cutoffs you've used?
Well, not at this stage, Peter, because as we said, we've got to refine them. So once we do that and we calibrate the logs to the core, to the fluids, then we can do that. But again, people demanding all of this at this stage when we are still in operations, is a bit unreasonable.
Well,
we've
I'm
still
not
got work to
demanding
do.
it. I'm just asking because, you've obviously used some numbers, but, if you're not very confident about what you're using at the moment, I can understand your reluctance to share.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yes. Okay. Anything else, Peter?
Okay. Thanks.
All right. I've got time for one last one. Robert.
Thanks. Obviously, a little bit interested in how you're going to continue.
Sorry, Robert. This is Robert. Sorry, this line is terrible. We can't hear you. If you don't mind emailing your question, and I'll be able to answer it for you. But I'll go to someone else because we can't hear you. James. Lucky last.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate it. Yeah, I just have a general question in terms of I know you probably can't give an exact figure, but the current cash balance and how you are sitting, I guess, for the activities over the coming weeks to months.
Yeah, well, I obviously can't give you an exact cash balance because that needs disclosure to the market. I'm not going to do it in a webinar. But as I said, we're working on a number of funding options for our future program. So those are still in progress. Obviously, now with two discoveries from the Upper and the Lower Angwa, that puts us in a very, very strong position. So we're looking at a number of funding options.
Yeah, good. Thanks. Yeah, I just hope the pack partners don't get their noses in trouble, as they usually do. So. Yeah, I know. I'm just a little bit. I hope to not see all the instos. Just continually get their feed and then dump to the market as they've been doing. But that's my personal opinion.
Yep. No, that's fair enough.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Thank you. Thanks for all of your support again to our shareholders. We've delivered 2 discoveries from Mukuyu-2, a posthumous discovery from Mukuyu-1. We've got an entire basin ahead of us now to go and explore and appraise, generate some more value from. We've got, as I said, we've got significant upside from where we sit currently. If you look at some of our comparative peers in other basins and how this has unfolded, and some already in Australia in places like the Perth Basin. So this is just the beginning. It is a very, very good start. Two discoveries from 2 wells. Thanks all for your support, and take care. And we'll hopefully be touching base very soon with some more news.